All right. Okay, thank you for that. Good afternoon, everyone. That's all right for 3:30. I'll take it. And hello to everybody on the Zoom. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for our discussion at the President's Diversity Council. This is going to be a good one, so I'm very happy that you are here in attendance. For those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Stewart, the AVP for Student Affairs Multicultural Services, and I'm going to very quickly turn our conversation over to Mr. Mark Wheeler, who is our university architect. Nope, I just wanted to show you who he is. There's Mark Wheeler, our university architect. Now, that's not who I'm turning it over to. Sofix Solutions, our consulting company, who is working with our architect and all others on this project. Bethany and Angela are coming up to talk with you now. Thank you.
Oh, I actually was going to let Mark.
So I told you everybody that's here to speak to you. You've seen them all. So when they come up, you already know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Am I supposed to stand behind this?
You can carry the mic off.
Okay. It's hard to saddle me, but I'll try to be good. All right, can everybody hear me? Is it too loud? It's hard to know with the mask, right? All right. Well, it's good to have everybody here this afternoon. Appreciate your time and attendance, and appreciate everybody that's on the Zoom. I was thinking as we were preparing for this time, it's really our most important asset. I don't know that I realized that when I was your age, but as you get, well, older, you start to realize that more. So again, really appreciate everybody's time. Quick couple questions. How many freshmen do we have? Not picking on you, just curious. So a couple here, good, all right. How many people heard me speak in this same location about a similar project back in February? Awesome, very good. Well, I'm going to start there here in just a moment, and then we'll kind of introduce the entire team and what we're trying to accomplish. So a few things, if everybody could just turn their phone on vibrate, I want to have your captured attention, because we're going to walk in this endeavor together. So the thing is, you walk in the door to this place this afternoon, we're in a partnership together. So there's no stupid questions. You can ask me anything you desire. And if anybody says anything on the presentation that you don't understand, I challenge you to raise your hand, because I'd like to make sure we're presenting things clearly. Sometimes I'm an architect, so sometimes I can use lingo that non-architects don't understand, so you got to call me out. So everybody agree to that? You're going to call me out if you don't, I say something that's too lingo and you don't understand. So I want to make sure we're presenting that clearly. And again, I welcome your participation as we kind of move through this. So I will start here, assuming I can click right. Does this work? Are you clicking next or am I clicking next? All right. So we'll just do that. I'll say next. How about that? So those of you that were here, last time I was here and we presented was back in February, which seemed like a lifetime ago, right? COVID was being talked about, but not really here yet, really a month before City of Springfield shut down. So that does really seem like a lifetime ago. I'll go over some of this for those of you that were not here in that meeting. I want to talk about a little bit of groundwork that's been laid for this project. And that groundwork really goes back even before February. It actually goes back several years before that. In Freddie and what we have there, that was the stepping stone for where we're headed today. And the primary focus for today is what we're going to call phase 1. And that's a stepping stone for what we're going to call phase 2. Very elaborate terms, right? But we're doing some work that's going to happen sooner, and then we're going to do more work that's going to happen later. But again, phase one, and we'll get into that more, is primary purpose of today. So as far as project parameters, the things we were looking at when I was first kind of investigating this project, we had to come up with some ground rules per se. So typically as I plan the university campus and infrastructure, so I have a rule that typically says reserve academic spaces for academic functions. So that kind of makes sense, right? We're a higher ed institution, and if we have academic space, we try to reserve that for academic functions. Based on feedback we received from you all, the downtown campus was not an option. Okay, and I agree with that because it's too remote. Potentially, there's poor perception that we're just placing this new center kind of off campus, so that's not our desire. So that was a rule. In conjunction with that, the facility must be located centrally on campus. Well, if I ask you all where is centrally located on campus, what buildings come to mind? You got it. You're right. They used to give out things, but people answer, but COVID, I'm not supposed to do that, right? But you're right. Here we are, PSU. And then another parameter was the project was to occur as soon as possible. So what does that mean to you all if I say as soon as possible? How many months are we talking? 12 months. That's another good answer. Some people say 2 weeks. Well, this takes a long time to do what we do. I won't get in the weeds on all that, but we're a state institution, so we got to do things exactly according to state statutes and bidding and all this. So it requires a long time. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right, phase one. Because there was discussion about having a student fee increase, right? For those of you that were here, you remember that. So phase one is a 0 student fee increase, okay? So the project will be paid by other university entities, but we're planning for phase two because we can't throw good money out and then essentially demolish what we just paid for. So that's why phase one and phase two have to go hand in hand, because we've got to really maximize our resources. So phase two, this is what we were talking back then, is a $20 student fee increase. That's not set in stone. That'll be up for you all to determine, but that's just tentatively what we're talking about. Next, please. All right, so this is just a quick diagram. In magenta there is the PSU, which is where we're at now. And I said since it's got to be centrally located on campus, we said 1,000 feet. Next. So once that was determined, we started looking at what space was available here at PSU. So we met with Terry Weber and others. And there's a student org space, an office of student engagement. So when you walk downstairs in front of Starbucks, like if you're looking at Starbucks, or if you're ordering at Starbucks, I should say, that space would be to your back, okay? So it's currently occupied by student org and office of student engagement. But we're looking at the Multicultural Resource Center being at this location, again, phase one. Next. Obviously, those folks have to go somewhere. So level 1 game center, for those of you that are freshmen, you may not even older students may not even been down there. It's kind of tucked away. Used to be a bowling alley there. The bowling alley is still there, but it's not functional. That's this, all these lines right here. That's bowling alley. So since it's not functional, we've got to do something with that space. So we're looking at relocating Office of Student Engagement and Student Org over there. And then Diversity Center, Multicultural Resource Center here. And it turns out the space swap is quite nice. Next. So that's where we're talking in the kind of blue outlines. We're not saying that's what it'll look like when this project's done. That's just the diagram showing location. Next. And essentially, 10 to 12 month timeline. Well, here we are in September, end of September. The goal is to have this project complete by fall. So clearly we're less than a year time frame. And then square footage net gain based on what Multicultural Resource Center currently has. It'll be an increase of almost 2,000 square feet, 1,900. So that's kind of, depending on house sizes, it's well above average a house size, but that at least tells you approximately what kind of square footage we're dealing with. Total project estimates, $1.56 million. Next. So that's all that was kind of some groundwork that I wanted to go through quickly to lay the foundation for the discussion today. Since we met in February, there's still work that's occurred. Part of that work was that we have engaged outside consultants. The office that I manage is, again, planning, design, and construction, and Adam Schuler is on the Zoom. He'll be project manager on the project. We are a combination of folks in our office. We're architects, planners. We can execute some projects on campus, but projects such as this, we hire outside consultant teams. So these are some of the faces that will be involved in this project. And at this time, I'll just hand over the mic to part of the design team, and Bethany Henry with Dake Wells, and she can introduce the team.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. So I am Bethany Henry. I work at Dake Wells Architecture, and then over here with Andrew Wells and Angela Shanaka.
That's what we look like without masks.
So we also have a change management firm that is on our team called Sofix Solutions. Unfortunately, they weren't able to be here today because they had something on their calendar before they were even hired for this project. But I'm going to show a quick video after this so you guys can see their faces and see who they are. And another really important part of our team is you all. So we have no idea what this space looks like yet, what it's going to be, and we're going to be looking to you guys to help us figure that out.
Hello, MSU friends. My name is Stevie Smith.
And I'm Rodney Smith. We're co-founders and managing partners of Sofix Solutions.
Right here in Kansas City, Missouri. We're a change management solutions firm. We help organizations navigate change through an equity lens. And we're really excited to be able to join you in this exciting new endeavor. Although we won't be able to be here this afternoon with you, we're really looking forward to being on campus next week.
On September 28th and 29th.
That's right. So we're really excited. You'll be able to learn more about that a little later throughout the session. But feel free to join in. Join us for our tour. Tell us what it's like to be on the MSU's campus, and let us know how we can support. So we look forward to connecting with you, and we will see you soon.
We'll see you then.
Bye.
Okay, so this is just kind of a map. Our architecture firm is here in Springfield. Our office is down on the square. And then Sofix Solutions is actually out of Kansas City. So our practice is about 80% of our work is for higher ed or K-12 schools. And I think part of that is because we really believe that architecture has the power to change people's lives. And so we focus a lot on clients that are the end users of the space that we design. So the quality of buildings and spaces has a strong influence on the quality of people's lives. Decisions about the design, planning, and management of spaces can enhance or restrict a sense of belonging. They can increase or reduce feelings of security and stretch or limit boundaries. They can remove real or imagined barriers between communities and foster understanding and generosity of spirit. So this is kind of how we work. We're always listening to the input that we have. Then we're coming up with responses and ideas. We're taking it back to you guys, listening, and then we're questioning what you guys say so that we really understand. What we're trying to get at, the essence of the project.
Hi, everyone. I know Mark Wheeler started to kind of get to know the room, but as we move forward, I also wanted to know if we have any sophomores here. Okay, what about juniors? Awesome. Do we have any seniors at all? Awesome. What about, I don't know, super seniors or grad assistants or alumni? Awesome. Okay.
Pretty good mix.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, there's a variety of people in this room, so I know that your engagement, especially the ones with the seniors, is probably going to be, lesser than, you might not get to experience this space as a student. However, just like this, your Poi quote says, the principle is, this is just a chapter of your lives, and what this project becomes, what your input helps us make this project become can help, the future generations. So everything that's on this campus today serves a purpose before you and after you, so.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the project schedule, because most of you guys have probably not been a part of this process before. But you'll see at the very end there is the first day of classes of next semester. So this schedule basically backs into all the meetings and all the different things you need to do to get that done. So these meetings here in the maroon color are meetings that we're going to reach back out to you. So today is kind of our first kickoff meeting here, but it won't be your only opportunity to give us input and to kind of see what we're working on. So we've already started on field measurements in the existing space downstairs. And you can kind of see there's Angela kind of measuring the space. We're actually in the guts of the bowling alley there to kind of figure out everything that's going to go into ductwork and ceiling heights and light switch. So that's kind of happening in the background here. And then these are the meetings we started here. And this part of the phase is really about discovery and understanding your guys' thoughts. So we have the kickoff meeting here. Sofix Solutions will be here Monday and Tuesday of next week, so you'll see that here. Then we've got kind of fall holiday lined out, and then we have another full day of workshops on the 13th. So people will be reaching back out to you guys to help you get signed up for these kind of different events. But we'll do dot surveys and polling, digital polling probably with COVID at those meetings. So our next meeting we'll come back to you and we'll present back to you what you told us. So we'll have graphs and surveys and those sorts of things to kind of talk through consensus. And then we'll start working on what we call programming, and that's actually a list of all the spaces that we have to have and the sizes for each one. So that kind of gets in the weeds, but we need your help to know make sure all the spaces are accounted for. So. And then our next meeting we'll take those spaces and we'll start looking at some 3D images and some concepts and some actual floor plans that begin to give you an idea of what the space is going to look like and feel like at those meetings. And then that starts to kind of wrap up right before winter holiday. And then we kind of switch on our end into what we call construction documents, and that's where we actually draw for the contractor every little thing that he has to install or purchase. And so we will start meeting with all those groups, our mechanical consultants. So we'll be less maybe engaged with you guys, but we'll be executing all the things that we've talked about over those last meetings. And that's kind of some images of what those drawings look like. And then we will send those out to bid with the contractor. It'll go out to anyone who wants to put a price on it. And once we get those bids back, it will go to the Board of Governors to approve a contractor to actually build the space. And then construction begins. And I did kind of point it out, but during all of this, we're also going to be engaging with the student engagement office that we're moving out of that space and into the bowling alley. So that'll be kind of going on in the background too, and moving them out at the right time so we can kind of get both of these things going. So you can see there's a lot of work to be done. And so real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. So I'm going to kind of turn this over to Angela here. Go ahead. So we're going to ask you some questions after Angela presents some case studies. But think about these as we kind of go through these, case study slides. So what is the purpose of the current multicultural space? What should the purpose for the new multicultural space be? What do you think the name of the new space should be? And then we're actually going to ask you for some ideas and thoughts of what you think should be in the space. So we've never done it before, but we're going to do a digital poll once Angela kind of gets through the case studies here, but just kind of think about that in the back of your mind while we go through these next slides.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. Okay, so before I kind of start, again, I like quotes and I like proverbs because I think they really relate to before and after. I'm also like I wouldn't say I'm pretty young. So I just graduated last year, so I think that says a lot. But I want to share with you a proverb from my home country, Rwanda, that I think applies to what we're starting here today. And it goes, "Akabuye nisiza, ntikabonekera mwisaka." And that means what is not found during the plowing or the preparation of the ground will not be found once the roof is installed. And so I think that kind of relates to what we're doing here today. We're embarking on this important project, this important journey, and we hope that you're as excited as we are, and we want to make sure that we have all the information so that we make sure that this is the best possible solution for MSU as well as for you guys. But in that research, the research is not just, as Bethany said, what are multicultural centers, right? It's also, what do they mean? Why did they even begin, right? So we did some research to try to understand the context around which these centers first were created. And so in the 50s and 70s in the US, a lot of different movements kind of, not necessarily erupted, but increased their scale and were amplified. The civil rights movement, Brown versus Board of Education, as well as other movements such as the women's liberation or the LGBTQIA. And all of these affected, the presence of underrepresented populations on college campuses, right? And that led to the demographics and the landscape at these college campuses to change. And so how did the colleges, they had to deal with that, right? Because there you are at predominantly white institutions. At predominantly white institutions, there's now a community of people that deserve to be there and want to feel like they belong. So there was a need for spaces where they would feel safe, right? So back then in the 20th century, those usually were catered towards the underrepresented populations. However, over the years, as our societies and really our world kind of evolved and became more interconnected and more diverse, the college campuses became more diverse as such. And so these programs expanded to be much more inclusive and multicultural. So you had an increase in the variety of centers dedicated to specific groups. You also had the inclusion of women's centers, programs for students with disabilities, as well as students with mental health issues and LGBTQIA+. And like I said, even the programs expanded to include all of those different resources. Now, where they were found and where they are found on campuses could be any multiple different locations, such as student unions, which is what MSU is going to have. They sometimes have dedicated buildings, and in other cases are either attached to or within student service buildings. So now that we've kind of understood the changing and extended purpose or meaning of potential culture centers, what are they? We did some research to try to understand what are other universities doing, what do they have on their campuses? And we look at a bunch of different universities, and as you can see in this little graphic, they're all different. They all have different ways of naming these centers. And they are all under a different kind of department, right? Which is great because that means that those centers respond to their campus, they respond to their student needs. And that's what we hope that this center is going to do on this campus as well. And we're going to talk, I'm going to show you 5 examples that hopefully kind of get your brain started and hopefully continue, not started. Hopefully you've thought about this before. But to give you some ideas of the potential of what this new space could be. So first we have the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So they have a dedicated building called named after a 19th century African American civil rights activist and the founder of the Boston Guardian. Yep, that's what it is. William Monroe Trotter. And what's interesting is in the 70s when this place first opened, it was a Black cultural center called the Trotter House. The name persisted when in the 80s it was renamed the William Trotter Multicultural Center, and the functions expanded. So today, it still holds true that the base and the foundation for the center was kind of social justice and activism. But today it is a much broader, it has a much broader program that serves the entire student body. And it has a variety of spaces for different meetings, as well as a node that has resources in partnership with other services on campus. So you could find assistance with the Center for Community Service. You have resources in partnership with counseling and psychological services, or with Center for Writing, etc. So the program, so the name itself kind of supports what the house stood for. It respects kind of the history of it, but it also expanded to be much more inclusive today. Next, we have the Multicultural Student Center at Portland State University. And as you can see, at Portland State, they have different cultural resource centers, right? And the Multicultural Student Center is actually under that big umbrella. And it serves as a student center because, as you can see, the other centers are catered towards more specific cultural communities. And so this is really kind of the gathering space for not only those communities, but the rest of the student body, and acts as more as a student center. And another thing I'm going to bring your attention to is the Pan-Africa Commons. And so that center is rather new. I think it's just a couple of years old. And if you'll notice that it's there's the La Casa Latina, but aside from that, it's the only other center that is not called a center, right? And we found in our research that actually what happened is the students gathered and they had a series of meetings in order to try to figure out what is the best name to call that center. And Commons came about because based on their explorations, it signified kind of unity and was much more beneficial for them. Next, we have the Multicultural Center at the Western Washington University. And here, this is a dedicated separate building, right, that houses a lot of different services. So in several previous examples, the Multicultural Center oftentimes was under a bigger umbrella of either cultural centers, but here, the Multicultural Center is the umbrella, right? And so under it, you have an expanded ethnic student center, which has kind of 19 identity-based clubs. It also has student outreach services, so it is open to all. It has kind of dedicated spaces for students who want to have resources for academic success. It has LGBTQIA, and it also has a student advocacy and identity resource center, right, that is under it, and has a diverse array of resources for queers, for legal information, and that kind of center helps with students to know their rights and help with like rental questions and issues. And it has like the Western Hub of Living Essentials, which is a center that is dedicated to helping students that experience food insecurity. And so you can see that the Multicultural Center now becomes more welcoming and more inclusive to the broader community. However, within the center, there are spaces where everyone kind of can find their own community or their resources specific to them. Next, we have our neighbor, the University of Arkansas. So their Center for Multicultural and Diversity Education. I mean, in the title, the key here is education, right? And so that is, again, kind of an umbrella that includes three components, or three pillars, if you will. It's the college readiness, student success, as well as diversity and inclusion. And what's interesting about this is that, so multicultural and diversity education is open for everyone because, I mean, college readiness, that's not necessarily specific. They're putting diversity and inclusion as an integral part of student education, right? And they're opening up to everyone and using kind of terms and using activities and, you know, proposing a lounge and multi-purpose room so that the multicultural resources as well as inclusive resources can be accessed by every student in order to build more aware and inclusive and accepting leaders of tomorrow. And finally, we have the Humboldt State University. They have a center called the Social Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Center. It used to be called the Multicultural Center and just recently changed its name, and it is part of 4 cultural centers for academic excellence. And here again, you can see an example of reframing these resource centers under kind of a broader perspective that doesn't diminish its purpose, but more so makes it much more inclusive and kind of strengthens its meaning. And so overall, in all of our research, we have found common programming or common spaces that a lot of those universities offer, as well as specific unique spaces that are not offered always, but we thought was interesting. And so this is just kind of a conclusion since I was talking a lot and, you know, there was a lot of slides, but to get you started, to get you thinking about what you would like your new space to have.
Okay, so now is the time for us to start polling you guys on your answers. So let me activate. Yeah, is there a room to show that? There we go. Okay, so if you guys take out your cell phones or your computers or your iPads and go to pollev.com/DWAS997, this question is going to pop up. In your opinion, what is the current purpose of the Multicultural Resource Center? And as soon as you guys hit enter, it's going to go on the screen here, so. Hopefully, yes. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Does everybody see that question on their cell phone right now?
How about, does anyone see it?
Yes. Does anyone see that on their cell phone?
There we go.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's at the top of the screen here, so it's pollev.com/DWAS997. Okay, Andrew, you want to read some of these out and see?
Yeah, you want to read them?
Yeah.
I can read them.
Okay. And then maybe we'll get some of you guys' thoughts too.
Okay, you have to redo the whole thing.
It'll come back. It'll come back.
Nope, that's
One more. There you go.
nope, that's
There you go, safe space. Place for multicultural students to go and feel like they belong there. Create a welcoming and educational space regarding diversity. Spaces for minorities to be unapologetic about themselves That's pretty good. Recognize and support BIPOC students at MSU to voice intersectionality and visibility issues. Place for minorities to feel valued and wanted. Place for minorities to have a sense of community on campus. A place to feel included. Inclusion is a pretty big kind of recurring word. Encouraging diversity on campus and creating a welcoming space for minorities, where minority students can feel safe. Student engagement and involvement, not just for native speakers, but also international students. A place where non-white students can come together collectively and be themselves. Location where people from different backgrounds can have meaningful interactions with each other. Have a space for students of underrepresented backgrounds to express themselves at a school that isn't welcoming to who they are. Provide a space for students to be welcome no matter their background. For minorities to feel included, as well as providing education about multiple somethings. Safe place for everyone to come and feel comfortable with who they are. So safety is a big issue. And inclusion, a place to find clubs, organizations that they identify with. That's pretty good. Provide a safe, open environment on campus for students who feel they lack that. A fun and educational environment where they all accept each other. Space that supports and encourages social interaction. Create programming to expand MSU's cultural competence pillar and safe space for minority students. Space that supports and encourages the social interaction, student success, and unity among underrepresented students. Provides resources and networks for underrepresented students. Space for students of color to socialize, feel comfortable, feel safe, have resources, and just see people who like them, who look like them. So, yeah, those are really good. Some consistencies in there. Probably what we would do is kind of go through and start to find common language among them and make some connections. Want to go on to the next one?
Okay, yeah. So our next question is really about if you guys see this space having maybe a different or a bigger changing goal than what the current space has. So let me. Okay, do you guys see that question on your phone now? Okay, great, thank you.
So the new space should be a space that's worth something, not a hideout in the basement. A relational space to encourage dialogue. That's a pretty good one. Not that these all aren't good, but some of them kind of jump out to me. I personally don't think the purpose really has to change. Primarily a space big enough for everyone to come together. Integration of culture. To continue encouraging and supporting the livelihood and experiences of underrepresented students on a PWI. Fully staffed center that has race-specific offices. To highlight and welcome minority students and let them be themselves. A place for anyone to come and learn to be educated on diverse student issues. Again, just a place for us to enjoy ourselves and feel like we belong instead of being hidden. To be more welcoming and visible to students across the campus. A space to learn about other cultures outside of your own. A space for students belonging to all minorities to form a community and actually feel accepted. A modern space with the technology and resources to accommodate all people and make them feel valuable. To be accessible and inviting for all cultures. Yes, I'm texting. The last part got cut off, but the MRC needs more exposure. Again, to voice intersectionality and disability issues. A space that encourages new ideas and learning and comfortability on campus. Actually be utilized to its full potential instead of something to show off and say that got cut off too. Catalyst for change should include a visible space for the immigrant and international student community. Having events on campus to facilitate conversations, provide a safe space for minorities. Space to unify students who are different and alike to foster meaningful relationships. A bigger space to make sure that BIPOC and LGBTQ+ students are accommodated. The purpose of the new MRC should be more inclusive, especially for students with disabilities. To provide an area for students to come together and have access to whatever they need to be more comfortable, as well as a race, gender, and sexual-oriented resources and staff. So clearly, what we're thinking about as you guys do this is as architects, we're thinking about how do we translate these things into physical space? What do they mean? How do we kind of expand words into three-dimensional qualities. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be thinking about. These are all really good.
And one of the things that I'm picking up on here is now it's not just a space for people to go to, but it's a space to kind of showcase and a space to teach, and a space for people of all types to come together, as opposed to maybe being more hidden in the location it is now.
We'll go to the next
You know?
question.
Oh, what should the name of the new space
We
be?
have some folks that came in the back. Can you explain?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You explain.
Yes. So we're doing a digital poll. So if you want to take out your cell phones and go to pollev.com/DWAS997, this question will pop up onto the screen. So this way this question is laid out a little bit different, but once people start putting answers in, you'll be able to like thumbs up or thumbs down, so you can start to see maybe some things rise to the top.
I actually wonder whether the same means the MRC, or, because I know you also have the Mary J. Price Walls Annex, right? Nice to see consensus as well here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is really good too. Just a little bit of context. When we first started talking about this project, one of the first questions that we asked ourselves was, why is it named what it's named? And what does that mean? What's the history of that? Where does that come from? And so this little exercise is probably as much for, maybe more for us than it is for you guys, I don't know, but it's not to say that we think that the name should change. It's really more about trying to understand what the name means to you all, and just questioning or asking the question, is it right? And again, this isn't something that we're gonna come up with a solution tonight or today, I don't think, but it's kind of putting some things out on the table for conversation.
Okay, I see the bars stop moving a little bit, so let's
Yeah,
go to
that's
our
good.
last question here. Okay, so,
Talk about this one.
What spaces should be included in the Multicultural Resource Center? So this again is kind of that consensus building tool. And there were a lot of maybe some of those unique spaces that we had listed for other campuses. We're curious if you guys have some of those. And another thing we were kind of talking about in our office is there an event that you guys have maybe throughout the year that is really successful? It's a really successful engagement of the entire student population. And maybe we create a space that really highlights that or focuses on that, so.
And I would encourage you to really try to think out of the box a little. I mean, come up with, maybe even challenge yourself to come up with things that were not on that slide that were listed. And I don't even know what that means.
People are very interested in the quiet room.
I'm gonna see if there's some
Do
answers. I'm gonna see if there's some answers.
If there's some answers. The music room studio, I think that's a Pretty cool idea. Has a lot to do with multiculturalism. Yeah, quiet room is pretty popular. Good.
And there's quite a few lower that aren't funneling to the top at this point, but
You want to read those?
Yeah, there's quite a few here. Reflection room, computer lab.
Oh, okay.
perfect.
It's kind of hard to read them while we're looking around. Yeah, prayer room. Okay, so that's kind of what we had for today. And does anyone have any questions that they want to ask for us? Yes.
Can you ask the students what is RBD or RBD space?
So she's asking, what is an RBD room? Anybody?
I think they meant Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Right.
Oh,
Oh, RBG.
yeah, okay,
something like that.
okay.
You can pass the mic if
Yeah.
anybody's got questions. Don't be shy. All right. I'll just hold the mic, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. I've got long arms.
Are they going to campus next week? Are the inventory and stuff, or is there going to be an announcement made to meet them?
Yeah, Sophic Solutions, do you want to take that up, me?
Yeah, so on Monday and Tuesday in the mornings, we will be kind of touring your current spaces and walking around campus. And then in the afternoons, we're gonna reach out to some student government and some maybe organizations. And then on the 13th, when they come back, we're actually gonna have times for you guys to sign up, and it'll be smaller groups, so we can have conversations with each other, face-to-face, flip chart, kind of doing similar stuff that we've done here.
Yeah, I'll stress, your feedback is critical. Because I can't do this project without you. They can't do this project without you. We're putting forth the effort, but you guys have to make it be what it's gonna be. And again, that means broadcasting, getting your peers here. We have a few freshmen in the room, but I'll put the onus on you all. You'll have it longer than anybody else in the room, so you really need to get your cohorts engaged. Any other questions? Sorry about that.
Of the potential spaces we were talking about, how many of them are actually going to be implemented with the building? Like, is there a certain amount that we're going to have available? Is there a certain budget or?
Yes and yes. So good question. We have a fixed container, so to say. So it's about 5,900 square feet, which goes quite rapidly. That's phase one. So we'll have to make some very important kind of priorities in that. And that's all part of any project we do. There's always trade-offs and concessions. And we will have a fixed budget. Rounding up, we're shooting for 1.6 million, which seems like a big giant sum of money, which in some ways it is a big giant sum of money. When we start constructing things, it depletes rapidly. So there are limits. Now this also leads to phase two. The list, if we can't get it now, then we'll be planning for the phase two addition, which would be an exterior addition to the building. A good question. We do have limited resources on both accounts. Any other questions?
Could I add to that, Mark?
Yep.
So the other thing that we're trying to do here is get you guys to just get your juices flowing about what kind of things might be possible. But a big part of this whole programming effort is to, our challenge is to get you ultimately to think about what do you want to be able to do in this place as much or more than what the space name is. So we tend to start by saying, do you want a kitchenette to get your juices flowing? But ultimately what we want to know is, do you want to cook? Because if you want to cook, then what do you want to cook? And why do you want to cook? Well, we want to cook because we want to teach other people about certain types of cooking. So ultimately in the digging process, we're trying to get everybody that's involved to really think about, what do you really want to try to accomplish with the space? And then it's our job to start to translate that into some sort of square footage, some sort of built space that helps you achieve your goals. Does that make sense? So it seems probably a bit shallow right now, but over time, the process, you kind of trust the process, and the process will get deeper and deeper. Because what ultimately may happen is that you may say, well, we said we wanted X. Well, you don't have X, you actually have Y, which does these 4 things that you wanted to be able to accomplish. So that's ultimately what we're trying to get to, is to be able to find a way to sort of maximize the possibilities of this 5,900 square feet that we have to work with. And then also think about, what can we do now? What makes sense to do now in phase 1? But then what maybe other things, maybe we can't accomplish it now, but it makes a whole lot of sense to do that in phase 2. So there's kind of a longer term plan to be able to accomplish some of those goals. Does that kind of make sense?
And I would even add that, I mean, a big question I think everybody needs to ask is, what makes this project successful? Now, I've already thought of that, and I have a definition, which I don't think I'm going to give you today. We'll talk about it later on, because in some ways it doesn't matter what I think, right? It's just one idea. But we're also leveraging phase 1 to prepare for a student fee increase so that we get phase 2. So we've got to build this big cohort of, again, input, collaboration, and to move this thing forward. So any other questions or statements on that?
Mark, I don't know if anybody online has written in any comments or questions. Can you check that? Because we do have some people online.
So the question is online input, questions, comments.
You're done with the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Looks like there's one here.
There you go.
Oh, can you see it, Mark? Okay. My question is, when we did the research, if we considered the international students' needs to meet our social justice and inclusion, or if the new MRC attempt to consider the international students' expectation on campus.
So I guess I can attempt to answer that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the process that we're going to undertake, which really begins today. Currently, the only decisions that have really been made are what I started the presentation with, is where phase 1 is going and roughly how big it is, just based on the space parameters that we currently have. So pretty much anything else, or any other decision or input, that's what we're soliciting to the entire campus community, regardless of sector or segment, for lack of a better word. A good question. What else? You guys are quiet, which is okay. It's first meeting. This is a warm up for next week and the coming weeks, right? But Tara, do you have anything? I'll pick on you.
I just want to say, okay.
There you go.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm very excited to see everyone here. This has been a long time coming. I was really excited when we kind of got the ball rolling last year, and to be here in this room is very exciting. I'm just saying that. But if you ever need anything or have any ideas or anything, April, Blake, and myself are here for you. I didn't really put in much input because it's not about me, it's about you. And I'm just another student here, and I'm graduating this semester, and I'm only going to be here for another semester after that. So whatever you think would be most beneficial, I want to help to make that come to life. But yeah, thank you.
All right, who else? I think they've got a few more slides to talk about, but I want to make sure you all have the appropriate time to give feedback. And again, today's just the first of many days for that. Yes.
I just wanted to know when we would begin discussing the design of the building, like the interior design, because that's where most of my questions come in.
What questions do you have?
Well, I don't have questions, and I have like input, like different things, like, I don't know, colors, plants. I mentioned, it was really at the bottom, nobody liked it. But I said a historic room, or maybe just a lot of like different plaques about, just like different leaders around the globe, like international people, African people, all sorts of different kind of people. I really would like to see a lot of different plaques and information on them, in the building, or even if it's just one big room that's dedicated to all of these influential leaders. I'd really like to see that. So I don't really have a question, I'm just asking.
That's good too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's really good.
I mean, I'm not gonna speak for the design team, I'll tell you my opinion on that. I mean, I feel like the more information we have, the earlier, the better, because there could be real project drivers that really start to inform the entire design. Now, the actual, like, when you pick the color, well, it goes back to Bethany's schedule, I don't know. I mean,
It'll be, like,
yeah.
the end of the semester,
But if you want a historical room, then that's things that need to be discussed now, because that space, right? Or maybe that's incorporated with a student gathering area or something to that effect. So that's why those things are important now too.
There's another question.
Okay, what will happen to the current MRC annex? The space is severely outdated, but I assume it will be used for something else.
They make a good assumption. It will be used for something else. I don't have a good answer for that today. That'll be investigated. Res Life always needs space. I think probably the easiest transition would be a lounge space, because that would require little kind of infrastructure there. But that's not been determined to date, to my knowledge, unless Dee knows something I don't. So that'll be investigated, but it will be used. Space is precious on campus, so we use it accordingly.
So Mark, we didn't have any more polling questions, but I asked the question earlier about if there's a particular event on campus that you guys feel like is really engaging for the whole student body. Does anybody want to speak to that? Does anybody have any ideas about that?
Yes, I see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, well. As far as like an engaging student event, with like the whole entire campus body, unfortunately, I can't really speak life to that. But as far as for underrepresented groups, we do put on the barbecue that happens at the beginning of every school year. And so that's a way for students who are either like Black or brown, international students, whoever honestly wants to come, even the majority can come as well. That's normally like one of the most engaging events that we put on.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I missed what you called it.
The barbecue. It basically gives like multicultural students ways to connect with one another, as well as kind of learn what kind of different resources are available for them.
Okay, and then where does that happen on campus?
Yeah, it kind of, like my colleague said, it kind of moves around from time to time, depending on space and especially like circumstance. But for this year, we held it over in the courtyard of Freddie.
Okay, yeah, that's great. How many people showed up? About?
Like, like, maybe like 100 or so.
So 100 for those on Zoom.
Cool.
You guys have any questions?
All right.
I just have a quick question. Like about the space and everything, what do you guys think is like the predicted capacity, like occupancy, but like how many people could be in the building, I guess? Like this is like not thinking about like COVID regulations, but like, you know, when times get better and we don't have to wear the mask, how many people do you think like could fill up the space? Because like what if it's like too small, so big house, how many?
Okay, so it's a good question. We later on will do, it's a code calculation, so there's a building code that we have to adhere to. And depending on how the space is divided up really determines to answer your question. So I don't necessarily know that yet until we figure out the program.
Yeah, I would kind of turn the question around a little bit. What larger size gathering space do you think should be in the space? How many people should it hold? Obviously, there's the kind of larger auditorium here in the PSU that you probably would use for, Mark, do you know how many people seat in that auditorium?
You're talking about a PSU theater?
Yeah.
300 people or something?
300?
Yeah, it's roughly that.
Okay.
Then I would say too, like, I mean, that's a really good question. And currently the space, I mean, it is what it is, right? It's like, it's kind of all glassed in, it's boxed in. But if the desire is for that to really expand maybe out into the Starbucks or seating lounge area, then architecturally there's things you can do to actually open that space up more than what it currently is. So good question, something to consider. We just don't have answers as far as occupancy yet based on use. I'll hit you first.
I was just gonna say, as far as like how much we would like want, it's like so many multicultural organizations on campus that would love to utilize the space. And I've seen attempts in the other smaller spaces, and it's very, very difficult because so many people want more. Like we feel so cramped, we're sitting on the floors. It's very uncomfortable. So we would love a space that, I don't know, at least 50 people can like at least be able to utilize it in the space so people can meet there and feel comfortable, not like have to book rooms and stuff all the time. We can book the space in MRC.
Yeah, something that's convenient for you guys. It's, you control who's using it, and you can kind of play around that.
And from recollection, it seemed like on that list of program that the meeting space was pretty up high up on the list. So, so that bodes well for getting
People
50
fine with the
there.
lounge space. We don't need it to be like super formal, but
Yeah.
it sucks sitting on the floor sometimes.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
can vouch for that.
And we can talk about ways to make a space really flexible. How does it close down and open back up to kind of change and grow with the needs that you guys have?
And furniture solutions help, and I was saying earlier, one thing we learned through COVID, I think the more flexible our space is and the more open it is, the better. I don't see that trend changing anytime soon, but that would bode well for what you're saying there. Do you have a question?
So y'all pretty much just hit what I was gonna say about spaces being flexible and having multiple purposes. And just to go off the slides that we've seen, the Michigan Multicultural University of Michigan Center, how the lounge area was set up. Like, say we have like a screen like this size and down there, so we can like do movie nights or like have banquets or like a space that's like big and open, but also they can be used like to like what you said, bring in different furniture, move it out, open up the space, or make it smaller and more personal feeling. So yeah, I feel like the multi-purpose spaces, those would be good to have.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a really important piece to the project.
So my question is more directed at the MSU faculty members that are here. So I've been here at Missouri State since fall 2014. And for what I've interpreted, there's been a lot of rhetoric as far as like getting the engagement of our student populations being more focused on us going out and getting the word out there and maybe focus on our freshmen that are in the room and generating that conversation. So for me, as someone who's been here for a hot minute, my question is, with our amazing visual arts team, our graphic design team, why are we not doubling down on this pillar of cultural competence that Missouri State likes to put out in the open, and really doubling down and creating videos, creating advertisements, and saying, this is something that we recognize this need in our community. We want to support our Black and brown students in doing this. Can we come together as a campus body, as a Springfield community, and raise this money or whatever, get the support? Why is it always on us to go out here and voice our voice? Why is it the university backing this up and going out on our behalf?
Okay, thank you. Does somebody, I'll make one statement on that. I don't know if somebody else wants to add in. I don't want to imply when I said you all get the word out, I didn't want to imply that that's putting it off on you, because I'll do the same. But you all have a way of talking to each other that I don't think I'm that engaging. You know, followers on Facebook or Twitter, I've got like 150. So I'm probably one of the lowest in the room, right? So I get the message out, but I don't think it'll be as effective as I would like it to be. So that's just, I don't know if that comment was based on something I said earlier, so I just want to clarify that. Anybody else want to take that one?
Well, I can take a stab at adding to that.
Okay.
You know, I think there's a great deal of support here at the university. We're always trying to figure out what the students want, what do they need, how can we best work within that. So I think there's a great deal of support. I will say too that our friends in development, our development office, the folks who raise money for the university, they have identified, you know, helping us as one of the top priorities for student affairs. So if you see their little materials they put together when they visit with alums or donors, the Multicultural Center is the top student affairs initiative. So I do think there's a lot of interest and support, and we all want to work together on this.
Okay.
And I would say, maybe this is the discussions that we'll be having will be a little bit different because we're focusing on a project that is going to come into fruition. And so this is the first of the meetings, but let us show you that we're listening and that we're trying to create a really great space for you guys.
So I guess I would ask the question maybe back to you is what should I be doing? Again, you know, I'm a university architect, our office is planning, design, and construction. I mean, does anybody have any recommendations on what I should do? As we go through this process, I want it to be as transparent as absolutely possible. So I can set up a web page specifically for this project. I can set up an email address specifically for this project. I can submit FAQs, but none of that, I'm not sure that really addresses your question. And again, I don't feel like I'm very adept at social media and things like that, but I'm open.
So again, in my opinion, it's not really about social media and that kind of engagement. I mean, from what I've seen over these years is we can create, for example, all these viral videos of like the Star Wars themes just came to my mind. Why don't we take that same effort and that same enthusiasm and apply it to our multicultural programs? If we like, for example, with all the languages that we have, like we have these amazing programs, why are we not putting that same kind of enthusiasm and effort into creating content to advertise these programs?
Again, I don't have a good answer. I don't know if anybody else in the room wants to take that. But I really appreciate the candid question.
So, good afternoon. So when you say advertise programs, are you speaking programs in general, or are you talking about this particular event?
I'm sorry, for this particular event.
Okay, so.
For our past videos that go
Yeah.
viral and stuff like that.
So let me say this. This is not the first time we've had any of these meetings. Let me be clear about that. We've had these meetings for over a year. And some of you have been in the room, others of you have not been in the room. But this is not the first time we've had a conversation about starting this venture. So if that's the case, and when we're talking about putting together initiatives, sure, we can do videos. But does that get you all in the room? If that's what gets you in the room, then we'll do videos, but I don't think that's what gets you in the room. And we can do that. But we need your input, and we've been doing this over a year. We continue to have these meetings. So when we don't have your input, we can't guess what it is you want. I've been in the room every single time we've had these meetings with Mr. Wheeler, Dr. Cisco, President Smart, Dr. Stewart, Mr. Moores, Mr. Pratt, and you all kind of ebb and flow about students who come in and out of the room. And I say that because sometimes you know, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you feel like saying something, sometimes you don't. But we can't guess as to what it is you want. You have to say what it is you want. And I feel like I have to say that because, again, this is not new. None of this is new. When we talk about the Belong to Q, yes, we had about 100 people this year. You know why? Anybody? COVID related. Last year we had the same event. Where was it? In Foster Rec Center. How many people did we have? Over 1,000. The year before, same amount. You know why? Because I've been here and I've helped put that together. So if you want the space to do those kinds of activities, you have to say, wow, we had 1,000 people last year. We had 100 people this year because we were trying to keep people safe. There is so much support on this campus about putting this initiative and bringing it to fruition. But again, I keep saying it, you have to say what it is you want and what you need. There are 20 of you in the room or so. Where are the rest of you? Online? Are we guessing? Don't make us guess. Because see, you tell us what you want. There are people in the room who have said, we're going to put the money forward. Even when we aren't putting money forward for anything else. We've said, this is about you. So what is it you need? What is it you want? You gotta say it. We can't guess. My mom used to always say, I can't read your mind. If I could, I'd be rich right about now because I'd be reading a whole bunch of people's minds. So you gotta say. You gotta be engaged. Each one of you bring one next time. But let's not say this is the first of many meetings to come. No, this is the first one of this month, of this semester. But we've had several before. Some of you have been in those meetings, others of you have not. Put it on paper. Send it through. But they can't do their jobs without you. They just can't.
I just want to add to that. Perfect speech. Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Some of y'all might remember last year we set up an email address. It is diversitycenterdiscussion@MissouriState.edu. So if you leave here, you talk to your friends, they have an idea, email us. If you think of something, email us, diversitycenterdiscussion@MissouriState.edu. Okay?
Okay, very good. I will add, time is of the essence. Again, I keep talking about next Monday, Tuesday. Civic Solutions is going to be here. The more we know now, the better, because there comes a point decisions have to be made if this is going to be open in the fall. And if we get new input, let's just say January 1, then it may not be able to be incorporated at that point, because it could be already too late. So that's why it's important that we know everything possible as soon as we can. Understanding it takes time to think about these things. It's a complex project, complex issues. But the more we know, the sooner the better. Okay, what else? Do you have more slides, Stephanie, you want to present?
I don't have any more for today.
Okay, so are there any other questions? Or is everybody, all right?
I think it would be, so I know that some people feel like accessibility, so like the doors, entrances and exits would be great, as well as like, when thinking about design, which, you know, I'm pretty confident that y'all got me. I think it should definitely, I think it should definitely represent like culture and unity, because I mean, as somebody who's kind of been here over 6 years, I know that like Missouri State is kind of like, we're still going through this unifying dynamic, and so I think it'd be really great to capitalize on that, as well as kind of show that our underrepresented students do make Missouri State, and it shouldn't be the fact that like we have underrepresented students who feel like they don't belong here. So capitalizing on that, and then also kind of creating some way to make it like feel welcoming for other students who may not identify as an underrepresented student, because most of the time it seems like whenever we do have glass walls or downstairs in the MRC, it kind of feels like people are just kind of like looking in. And I apologize to use the description, but it's almost like you're kind of being looked at through a cage. And I don't say that as just like my perception, but also the perception of my peers. And so kind of making it welcoming and it doesn't feel like that, would be great.
So maybe what I hear you saying is it's important to showcase what you guys are doing so people know the events and activities that you have, but also somehow to provide some privacy for some of the functions that you have, but kind of maybe balancing those two things.
Yeah, I think architecture is a really interesting balance. This actually came up in February, that you don't want to be in a fishbowl and on display, but you want to be open, welcoming, and not tucked away in the basement, as it was said earlier. So there's a real kind of interesting juxtaposition, potentially, of qualities or traits of space that to me is really interesting to be able to solve that. Again, don't know the answers, and that's why we hire these creative folks, but there's some real, I think, merit in those two things. So that's really good. You had something?
Backing up what April was saying, whenever people walk past and they look directly in there and they still don't know what the space stands for, it kind of sucks. So many people, everyone's probably walked past the MRC before, but probably 95% of the student body doesn't know what it is or what it stands for. So like welcoming and then like very clear what this space is for, that it is for everyone and it's an accepting space and it's a safe space and it's just a resource. So I think that's really important.
So I'll throw this out on that kind of line of thought. To me, like if I walk down there someday and if the space is complete, and if I saw a group of people, students in the space that was as diverse as our population and from every nation that's represented, to me that's the project success. Now that's just me, I may be misaligned. And if I am, please tell me. But to me, like, because currently there would be potentially a border or a boundary there, right? That maybe somebody like me wouldn't want to go in the space. And if we can remove that border boundary for all people, disability being one, to kind of segue on that, I mean, we'll make sure it's a fully accessible space. We're trying to go to a universal design campus, which is even more robust than ADA. You hear a lot about ADA. We're trying to go the next step past that. But to me, that's why this dividing wall that's there is really critical, because we don't want to put you on display. We don't want people to just like stand at the glass and look with their mouth open and be like, what is going on in there? I mean, maybe that could be a positive thing, like what's going on in there? I want to get involved and engage. But again, I want to eliminate that barrier. So I think that's a really good point, and that's a tough one, right? It's easy to design a conference room. It's tough to get people in the same space together that aren't forced to be there, and then to get them in dialogue and discussion. But that's, I think, would be a good gauge of the project. But again, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to demystify what goes on in that space. We want to showcase it somehow.
Okay, I don't want to belabor the point or the group, but I want to make sure everybody's had a chance to speak. Again, it won't be your last chance. You all have to come back. As it's been said, you got to bring friends. I don't just put that on you. Everybody in the room, everybody in Zoom, the onus is on each and every one of us to get people engaged in this project. I can't speak too far to the past. I've only been at the university on this position 2 years, overall 4 years. But we can speak to the future. And we're committed. So anything else? Okay. The design team's good?
Yep, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming today and participating. Really, really appreciate it.
Please sanitize your hand microphone. Thanks. Good job.
Before you leave, I want to thank everybody again. I think we had 30 people in the room or so, and about 35 on the Zoom at one point. We did hear that Celtic Solutions is coming on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Please look, student orgs, April. Please look for sign-up sheets. Okay, it will be electronic. Look for those for the Monday, Tuesday visit, as well as the October 13th visit. Okay? Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
This is way better than